Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com, your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me for pricing, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a watch launched in 2003 and made for about a decade after. It's still a rare sight and a connoisseur's choice. This is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Compressor Geographic. It takes the geographic complication first launched in 1989 and combines it with the 41mm master compressor case that debuted in 2002 for a new generation of JLC sports watches. So 41mm in diameter in what's known as gray gold, a type of white gold, more on that in a moment. The watch is 14mm thick from lug tip to lug tip, 49.5mm, and it has a nice broad 21mm spacing between the lugs. Not to be confused with the master compressor diving series, this is somewhere between a master and a master compressor diving. It's sportier than the first, but it's not as bulky as the second. And you can see on my 16cm circumference wrist, it wears pretty well. I owned a watch in this case design and case size. Mine was in platinum. It was the Grand Memovox. And I can say it does fit well, but you don't want to go too much smaller. I think a 15cm circumference wrist would be the smallest that could wear this watch. It is, however, thinner than you expect. It has a cupped case back, so it nestles down, and then the bezel and the crystal are sloped. So yeah, you could wear it underneath a dress cuff, and I think that's going to surprise you when you actually try it on. The strap is high grade, and you can see that for a sports watch, it's a little bit unconventional, as alligator leather is kind of formal. Here we have semi-gloss, large rectangular scale, a dark brown, some stuffing or bolstering to give it volume. We have a monotone stitch, a sheer cut side, and then we have a lovely buckle. This is the second generation Jaeger-LeCoultre deployant clasp, and it combined the security of the first generation with greater depth and detail than the first. The first is secure, but it feels like thin stamped cheap metal, even in gold or platinum. Here we have a wonderful depth. You can see that there is a little bit of a fluting down the center that adds structural rigidity to the chassis, and that acts as a receiving channel for the other part of the clasp. We have a combination of media blasting and polish for double finish, and this ensures that you won't drop the watch when it's on your wrist. It's nicely made, and like the case, you could see it features the maker's mark of JLC. They don't just make the movement, they also make the case. The case is made of gray gold. I talked about it earlier, now I'll clarify. It is an upscale brand of white gold that's used by the better companies in the business. You'll see it on Rolex, you'll see it on Patek and others. It's white all the way through, and it never needs to be rhodium plated. Well, it's a little bit warmer in tone than, say, the blindingly white rhodium plated brand of white gold. There's no second color underneath if it gets scratched, and you never need to replate it. Now you can see the watch has relatively thin lugs when viewed head-on, but the case is very sporty in profile. It's sheer and it's massive with a shallow conical bezel and these distinctive compressor crowns. Let's talk about those. Now, white you're tight, red you're dead. It's just like that. See what I did there? I unlocked the watch. It has 100 meters of water resistance, and then with a simple half twist of each compressor crown, I unlock the watch for winding and setting. This is a wonderful feature because it doesn't wear out the stem seals. You're not threading in and out, so you're not wearing down those seals. They are toroidal, they compress, and they decompress, just like that. That's the only way they change their state. Also, it's easy to grip these wings if your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved, so if you have to do this, if it's hot weather, if you're in some sort of active lifestyle situation where you're sweating, if you've just been in the water, you can easily grip these compressor crowns, whereas a screw down crown can be rather tight and difficult to access. Now the crown up at 2 o'clock is used for setting the geographic system. And this is great because I have a second time zone in miniature, and it changes its time based on what time zone I set. Now this is great because I have 24 principal time zones represented by 23 reference cities. You can see there's a break between the Azores and Rio. But all I do is I set my reference city down here next to that red index, and that secondary time zone does all of the math for me. So let's say I'm going to go from London to New York. Well, That just did all the math for me. That little secondary time zone makes the calculation in an instant. It's a little bit different than a traditional world timer, and it's a bit more involved and automated than a conventional dual time. It's a unique system that JLC rolled out in 1989, and it remains a signature of the brand. Now, make no mistake, there are other ways to set the time. It's just more fun to do it with the time ring. The crown down at 4 o'clock gives me some of those secondary options. Now you see in the intermediate setting position, I can set that secondary time zone, and it will toggle an AM/PM indicator. The watch is still ticking. I've not hacked the movement. And as I change the time on that secondary time zone, which is in a 12-hour format, the little AM/PM indicator makes sure I know whether, for example, I'm looking at 3 past 3 a.m. or 3 past 3 p.m., and the watch clarifies that. Now, if I pull the crown all the way, it does activate the hacking seconds, so I can set this watch precisely to a reference time. There's a little push adjuster on the case flank to operate the radial date indicator. You can see that the watch is actually designed with a few nods to the 1968 E859 Polaris diving alarm. You can see it a bit in the shape of the indices as well as the font of the numerals, and a few Polaris models are said to have been made with hands similar to these, so that's the nod right there. Now, this is the white gold model, and the white gold models across the master compressor line generally featured this ruthenium gray dial. It is well loomed, and you can see that in the dark. Not only is the primary time zone loomed, but we also have a luminescent seconds hand. So that's how that works. Not every watch that features a seconds hand has a luminescent seconds hand. Just so you can see, and just to clarify, we do not have a loomed secondary time zone. We have loomed 3 hands at center. Now, on the reverse side, lots to love. Let me pull the clasp. There's not a movement to be seen, but there's a fascinating case back. So you have this geosphere, which was the symbol of the 1958 geophysical year. This was originally referenced by the geophysic chronometer back in the 1950s. It was a technician's watch that was chronometer grade, and of course 58 being the geophysical year, this was the symbol of it. It's now become the symbol of the Master 1000 Hours Control, a full cased-up test of the completed watch that JLC launched back in the early 1990s, first in 1992, and by 2004 it had spread across the line, including reversos. Now it's a 1,000-hour test of water resistance, shock resistance, durability, winding efficiency, power reserve, and chronometry, so it's more than just the timing test of the movement that you get with the COSC. You can see 10 ATM, it's 100 meters water resistant, and this watch has a movement called caliber 923 that is unidirectional automatic winder with approximately 43 hours of power reserve. It beats weight 8 beats per second. It has the dual time capability with the geographic feature. It is free sprung for durability, and it all pivots on 31 joules. So it is a technically sophisticated and fairly thin, complicated movement made in-house by JLC and then tuned in 6 positions for the Master 1000 Hours Control test. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.